For our next art project, we are going to be inspired by Janet's skates. Janet loves color. As a mixed media artist, she uses acrylic paint, oil pastels, pencils, as well as paint pens. She works intuitively and often begins with color and then allows the process to guide the direction. So let's get started. This is an artwork that I made the other day. I looked at making really beautiful shapes on the bottom, and I started with a pretty consistent color palette of this light blue, dark blue, reddy orange, and green, and then I kind of went from there. So I'm going to start with a different color palette this time and see where it takes me. Something I really loved about the artwork I was inspired by Janet was these really cool shapes that she was using. They're very organic, so they're, instead of being geometric with sharp lines, they have really smooth lines on the side. And with this piece, I'm actually going to end up making more colors of the same one, versus this one I did a little bit more variety. As you can see, I kind of thought that I would do 5 across because I messed up the spacing down here, and I just sort of went with it. I just made it work with what I was doing and followed that intuitive process of letting what happens guide what happens next. Alright, so now that my paint's dry, I'm going to start adding additional colors. As I'm looking at this part of my painting, I can't help but think of what Janet said on her website. She believes that the layers in her work, some beautiful and some are not so much, are just like our lives. They all work together to create a fabulous finished piece. So right now, I don't consider this a finished piece. I'm still working on it. I just kind of started putting on patterns to see what would happen, and I'm still going through the process. So now my next job is to think of what will make it even better, what will continue my process of layering. Because in the end, my paints that I used along the way, I covered up with a little white, I added some pencil crayon, and so there's lots of things that I did along the way that led me to here. I started this work with a light orange neon base that I had already painted down, but now I'm just adding in a little bit more pink neon to parts of it. What's helping me do this is actually the property that the neon paint is actually pretty thin, and then I'm also using zinc white paint, which is also a translucent paint versus titanium is very thick. As I've been working on my background, I feel like it really brought some unity to the whole thing, partially because I was overlapping some areas with the paint. So then there was this kind of translucent overlay happening, and that really made all the pieces sort of work together. So I'm really happy with where this is going right now, but I know it's not done yet. There's that feeling you get when something's done, and I know it's time for me to sit and look back and wonder what to do next, but I also know not quite done. I'm just gonna add a little bit more zinc white in some places and then leave it to dry for a little bit. As you can see, I've also started to add in more neon pink. Now I'll let it dry. I started thinking about what different materials Janet uses, and I was thinking for this particular piece, oil pastels could be really great. So I started just making kind of squiggly lines with my white oil pastel, and I like the results. Alright, so now I'm kind of at another pause moment. I've put oil pastels over all of them. I generally did the same thing with all the ones that looked very similar. And now I just need to sit back and think about what comes next. Alright, so personally I'm using a little bit of zinc white and I'm putting it over some of my different shapes. Now, something to keep in mind is if you don't have zinc white, then you could use something like titanium white mixed with a little bit of water. You could pick a more similar color, but you do need to make sure that it's a little thinned out. You could use some sort of acrylic medium to thin out your color. So these are all options for things you can do. And there we go. I think this painting's done. And you know what I find really cool is I was inspired by Janet Skate's work for both of them, and they turned out so differently because I was following an intuitive process of just letting what happens guide what happens next. So I hope you have so much fun with this project, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.